Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to our weekly live stream for China admissions. We are live on Instagram and on YouTube. So you can subscribe to us to either one of our channels in order to find these live streams and the previous live streams that we've done as well. So it all gets saved. So if you, in case, have missed anything or would like to watch them later or recommend them to someone, it's all going to be saved on either our Instagram or onto our YouTube channel. So today we are going to be talking about what you need to prepare in order to study in China. So your basic checklist of things you need to prepare in order to study in China. So a lot of you might know that most of the deadlines for 2023 have passed already. So there are very, very few programs that are still available. You can find them on our website. If you look for them, you can sort by the dates, and the deadlines are all there. So just keep that in mind. If you are still planning to apply for 2023, you really need to apply as soon as possible. There's just not a lot of availability left. If you're applying for 2024, then you are definitely early, but not too early, because we do recommend starting your journey about a year before you plan on actually going to the university. So we're going to be going over the things that you need to do to prepare for studying in China. So the first thing is doing research. So you should conduct very thorough research about the universities and the programs in China that interest you, and look into the admission requirements, look into the application deadlines, the program curriculum, faculty members, etc. All the information you need, you can find on China admissions. And if you would like to double check, you can also check on the university websites, but we have most of the information on China admissions, so you can find that over there. If you have any further questions that are not on or any you would like extra information that's not on our website, you can always send us an email at apply@chinaadmissions.com, and we will be able to get that information for you. So I do recommend just doing a lot of research about the university you want to go to. Why do you want to go to this university? Looking into why do you want to be in this city? Are you sure you want to be in that kind of city? Is there a certain reason? Are you going by the climate? Are you going by the university? And some people have very specific goals of like a very set on going to a specific university. But I would just also stay open-minded if we do give some recommendations, to look into those recommendations, because they might be better suited for you. And just also look into the admission requirements, because it is very important that you meet the admission requirements. If you do not, your application will not be accepted. Under no circumstances will they be able to accept your admission if you do not meet the requirements. So if you are over the age limit or under the age limit, you cannot get accepted. If your grades are very low, you cannot get accepted. And so those keep that in mind. If you don't have like certain documents, like if you don't have your English language certificate, you can't get accepted. So those are things that you need to prepare well in advance for, because depending on the country that you go to, it might take quite a long time to get certain documents. I come from South Africa, and getting things like a police clearance or applying for passport, those things can take quite a long time. So I would recommend doing that quite far in advance, a couple of months in advance, and just to make sure that you have everything. Because if you've only got 10 days left or 2 weeks left before the deadline, and you still have to do a medical examination, you still have to apply for a passport and get all these documents, it's going to be very difficult. I would recommend doing it a lot further in advance. Now, people ask, how far in advance can I do it? So if you're in your final year of high school or the year just before you start to study, you can start applying with China admissions. And basically, you can upload all your documents, get everything together, put that onto the system on China admissions. And then as soon as the application period starts for the university, we can submit it. And that will also give you the highest chance of getting accepted as well. Also look into the language that the university is teaching in this program in. So if you we have that on China admissions, we have the language that the program is taught in, but just keep in mind that if you're applying for a university, that the program is taught only in Chinese, and your level is very low, you're going to need to have a very high HSK score, which is the test you need to write, and that takes several years to get to. So just keep that in mind, and just make sure that you meet all the requirements. I keep saying this, but we have a lot of people applying that don't meet the requirements. So just make sure that you do. Okay. So also keep in mind that the documents for each university are going to be slightly different. This depends on the university. It also depends on the government. It depends on the province that the university is in as well. So they have different requirements. The universities might require a personal statement from you. They might require a CV. They might require a video introduction. They might require a certain amount of recommendation letters. So just be sure to prepare those well in advance. You won't be able to omit any of them. You have to provide all the necessary documents. For recommendation letters, we oftentimes will have students that have been out of school for quite a bit, or maybe a couple of years, and they feel like they can't ask for a recommendation letter since they're no longer at that school. However, that is usually not the case. It's very easy to ask for recommendation letters. If the schools are set up to create the recommendation letters as soon as possible. So the only thing I would recommend for you to do is to call your school if you're in the same country, or email your school to ask them for a recommendation letter, or talk to 2 different teachers that you had to ask for recommendation letters. I generally recommend getting some language teachers, like English teachers, to write recommendation letters. They tend to write really great ones. So I do recommend that. Or a professor that you really hit it off with. Don't think that just because you're out of school for 2-3 years that you can't ask for a recommendation letter anymore. It's not true. You definitely can. Just reach out and be sure to get them well in advance, because if you've only got a couple of days to get them, it might be quite difficult to get them in time. So just make sure to get that in advance. And then if you're in high school, just get your recommendation letters now already from your teachers if you're in your final year, so you can keep them for whenever you need them for applying to universities. Okay, academic transcripts. So your grades are going to matter, and this might come as a shock to some people. For some people, it might feel very obvious, but in a lot of different countries, your grades are not the only thing that are going to get you into university. You'll also be submitting your social activities, things that you have participated in, charitable activities, sports activities, etc. However, for applying to Chinese universities, those things do not matter. So they're going to be purely looking at your academic grades. They need to know how much you got, and just keep in mind that in certain countries, the pass rate is a different amount. In South Africa, I think the pass rate is about 40%. In a lot of countries, the pass rate is 50%. In China, the pass rate is 60%. If you have under 60% for a lot of your program, for a lot of your grades, for a lot of your subjects, and especially for subjects that are very crucial, like mathematics, physics, chemistry. If you're applying for like a medical degree, if you have underneath 60%, it's not considered a pass. It means that they consider that you failed that subject. So we recommend that you need to have over 70% for your grades on average, and even better, we really recommend that you have about 80% to apply on average. So just keep that in mind. If your grades are quite low, meaning that a lot of subjects you have underneath 60%. For a bachelor's program, we're going to recommend that you do a foundation program, which is basically a program where you redo your basic subjects, sciences, maths, etc., and you basically redo that. And then when you apply to the bachelor's program the next year, you'll be using those grades instead. So it gives you like a second chance to study hard and get better grades, and then do that. So if you're applying for a master's, I would recommend that to study quite hard for your bachelor's, and the same for if you're applying for PhD and your master's. If you have extremely low grades, you're not going to be accepted. So please also take the recommendations. We can't force you to not apply if you have lower grades, but we would also just like to help you and give better recommendations, because if you're going to apply and we already know that you're not going to get in because of your grades, just keep that into account. Okay. Financial planning. So, going to university is going to be expensive. Going to Chinese universities might be a lot cheaper depending on which country you come from, but also keep in mind that it's still going to cost something. And also, you're going to be an international student, which means that you also need to be able to cover the cost of getting a visa and applying, getting a visa, paying for the visa, paying for flight tickets to go to China, and then also getting accommodation in China and your living expenses in China. For me as a South African, it wasn't necessarily cheaper because the South African currency is weaker than the Chinese currency. So for some people that came from certain European countries, or if they came from America, they would think that the cost of living is extremely low. For me, it was extremely high. So it depends on which country you come from, how much the cost of living is going to be. So just keep that in mind. That it's not going to be cheap for everyone, and that you need to budget for that. You can apply for scholarships. Just keep in mind that China admissions doesn't help with scholarship applications. And also keep in mind that if you're applying for a scholarship, most of the scholarship deadlines are very early in the year. They end in April, May. So past that deadline, you won't be able to apply for a scholarship anymore. It also isn't guaranteed, and you need to be able to prove that you can pay the tuition fees, even if you don't get the scholarship. So just keep that in mind. And there's going to be a lot of extra costs involved, especially because you're an international student. So just keep it in mind. Now, health insurance. So health insurance for universities in China, they have a mandatory student health insurance that you have to buy at the beginning of each semester. So this is non-negotiable. You will not be able to enroll if you don't have this health insurance, but it is very cheap. It's cheap because it is discounted for the students, and all the students have to get this very specific health insurance. It covers all the major issues, and you'll be able to go to the doctor or the hospital without any issues, of course. But I would recommend just getting a short-term travel insurance in between traveling from your home country to arriving and registering in China and getting the student health insurance. There's a couple of days there that you will not be insured, and it is very, very, very important that you do have some kind of insurance during that period of time, because even though something probably will not happen, in the case that it does, it's going to be very expensive if you have to pay out of pocket. Now, also with health insurance, you need to do a medical examination before you go to China. You're going to have to do that. And that's the same for even if you go to other countries. If you're studying in the US, you're still going to need to do a basic medical checkup. This checkup is basically, you need to go, there's a specific template that we have on our website. You can email us to ask about it, or you can download it from our website as well, the Chinese template, and take that to your local doctor or hospital to get it filled out. It's basically a urine test, a blood test, an ECG for your heart, x-rays, and then basic checkups to make sure that you're healthy enough. The reason why you have to do this is because, of course, they need to see if you are fit enough, healthy enough to study abroad. This doesn't mean that that you won't be able to get treated, or you'll if you have an issue over there. But of course, if you have a very serious condition, your student health insurance might not cover that condition. So it is for your own benefit. So please make sure to get your medical health certificate before you apply. It is necessary, regardless of which country you're going to study in. Okay, visa application. So once you've gotten accepted into the university, they're going to send you your visa documents to your postal address. So you're going to take those documents and then go and make an appointment for a student visa. Make sure you've filled out all the requirements by your local Chinese embassy or Chinese visa application center. Take that there and then go apply for it. Usually you can get your Chinese visa within a couple of days. Okay. Great. So it's also not very expensive, and then you will soon be able to leave, fly to China, and you'll be able to change your visa to a student residence permit over there. Okay. Now, for accommodation, we have talked about this before. We have two very good videos on our YouTube channel. One is an event with Welsi, where their spokesperson, Yuhan, actually went over how to use Welsi. It's a platform, an app that you can download in order to book accommodation, specifically off-campus accommodation, and you can use it regardless if you're a student or not. So we do recommend going into that video and just listening to it. It's such an interesting video, and there's so many really good points there. And then we did another video about the short-term accommodation that you can book just before you book your apartment. So you can stay either on campus or off campus. On campus is for usually degree students. So if you're a non-degree student, like a Chinese language student, a foundation program student, or something, a student like that, you will usually not be able to stay on campus, which means that you'll have to find off-campus accommodation. If you can choose between the two, I would recommend getting on-campus accommodation. The reason why I say that is because the Chinese university campuses are usually quite large, and walking in between classes can take quite a long time. They even have little buses that you can take in between, and you might have certain classes early in the morning, late at night. So it depends on your schedule, but it's just a lot easier for you to stay on campus. It's also going to be a lot cheaper for you since there are government subsidized buildings. Now, your pre-departure checklist. You need to create a checklist of your essential items you need to pack, such as clothing suitable for the local climate you're going to be in, personal documents, and electronic copies of those documents, paper copies of those documents as well, your electronic devices, adapters, toiletries, any medications that you may require. So don't forget to check if you need any vaccinations before traveling. So just make sure you have all your health things sorted out and you have your checklist to go through before you go. We also have another video on our YouTube channel as well, going over everything you're going to need before you get to China. This was going over my own personal experiences, my own personal mistakes that I made when packing for China. So you can go over there and have a laugh about all the mistakes that I made and take some advice that I can give you about that as well. So it's really important to note that these preparations may vary depending on the specific requirements of each university or program. Always refer to the official website of the universities to double check as well, and to contact us if there are any questions that you would like to ask. So yes, that is basically it for everything you need to know about applying to a university in China before you get there. Okay, so I'm going to take a look at some of the questions we have. I'm going to try not to deviate from the topic that we have, which is preparing for going to China, since a lot of students have already applied and been accepted and are looking into the things they need to do in order to get there and what they need to prepare for. So let's take a look here on YouTube and see what questions we have. So RYM Mekedeche says, hi there, could you please record the live video? Okay, yes, so this is being recorded, and it will be on our Instagram where you can watch it again, and it will also be on our YouTube. You can watch all of our previous live streams that we've had, and they're very helpful guides as well, so just make sure to go and check them out over there. And Tolene says, thank you very much. I plan to apply for the 2023-2024 academic year. This is helpful. Really glad this is helpful. So also just be sure for you when you're applying to the program, to just check the deadlines and to be sure to apply well in advance. So that's all the questions we have on YouTube. Let's take a look here on Instagram. We have quite a couple of questions over here. Okay, so we have a question here from Aziz Khan, how to apply step-by-step for language course. So I've actually done a video of this already. It's on our Instagram, it's on our YouTube. Please go and look it up. We've done a complete guide going over all the frequently asked questions of applying as a Chinese language student. I was actually one myself as well. So just go and check that out over there. It's quite a long step-by-step process. So just go check it out. It's very in-depth. What if someone that's already in China wants to apply for school? Okay, so the process is going to be very similar. The main thing is that we need to know exactly when you're your visa expiration date is. If it is in less than a month, then we recommend that you apply directly to the university of choice as soon as possible, just because you can't waste any time and you cannot stay a day over your visa. You can get into a lot of very serious trouble for that. You can get deported for that. You can get kicked out of the university for that. So just make sure to know when your exact expiration date is. Certain visas cannot be changed into student visas. So just also be sure to check up on that with the university that you're going to apply to and with your public security bureau as well. Otherwise, it's going to be very similar for the application process. It also could be for you, you might want to go to the university closest to you. So if you're, let's say you are in Shanghai and you want to apply to Shanghai University, you can actually go to Shanghai University's admissions office and you can apply in person. So that might be a way to lift it off your shoulders, and you might really like doing that. So that is something that you can consider doing as well. That's how I applied for Shenzhen University when I was a student. This is also before I knew about China admissions. Okay, so I have an interesting question here. Kana Azib says, hey, is IELTS mandatory for admission or only HSK can be used? And what's the minimum requirement of HSK for a master's program? So you're asking about two very different programs, or two different, very different language tests. IELTS is an English test. So if you are applying for an English taught program, you're going to have to take an IELTS or a TOEFL test. Some universities, though not many of them, do accept the Duolingo test. I would check up which universities do on the university website, because not a lot of universities accept them. So if you can do IELTS or TOEFL, you can do that. If you are from one of the following countries, you do not need to provide one. So China recognizes 7 countries as native English-speaking countries. So if you come from the US, from Canada, from the UK, from Ireland, from New Zealand, from Australia, and from South Africa, you do not need an English language certificate. So just keep that in mind. Other places you're going to need one if your education was taught to you in English, fully in English. You can just ask your school to give you a letter stating that your education was taught fully in English, and you can use that as your English language certificate. An HSK is a Chinese language certificate. So if your course is taught in Chinese, you're going to need an HSK certificate. So you can't really interchange HSK, which is a Chinese language test, with IELTS, which is an English language test. And the level of HSK will differ, but usually if you are applying for a Chinese taught program, regardless of bachelor's or master's, you're going to need at least an HSK 4, but usually HSK 5 to 6. Okay, it's just Kai says, I want to ask if Shanghai Jiaotong University offers English taught master's degree in aeronautical engineering. I'm pretty sure they don't, as we don't have that on our website, and we have all their programs on our website. I would recommend just making sure on the university website, or you can check China admissions. If it's not there, then it is unfortunately not available. Just checking, there's a lot of questions. Okay, so I have another question here on YouTube from Fu Tinzar Mao Mo. Would you recommend studying psychology in China? It would help a lot with choosing my pathways. So yes, regardless of the program that you want to study, you can definitely find a lot of different options. The main thing is that I would recommend checking on the university websites and getting more information as to the subjects that are taught, and how often is this university applied to. I would strongly recommend against applying to universities that we don't have a lot of applications from, that are very, they don't have working websites. So you can find some of those universities where they either don't have a website, or they don't have a working website, or it's been made like 10 years ago and it's very, very outdated. I would recommend against that. I would recommend against applying to well-known universities that often have students applying to them, as it's also going to make your life as an international student a lot easier, and the program will most likely still exist, of course, because some of the outdated programs, outdated websites don't have the correct programs on them. So that's what I would recommend. Okay, and then let's see what else is here. Anything regarding the scholarship results, we are not, I think a lot of people get confused and think that we are the same thing as the CSC Scholarship Council. We are not. So we don't help with scholarship applications. Please check with an authority from the CSC website or with the council when checking the scholarship results, as we are not involved with that whatsoever. Okay, well, that is it for today's live stream. If you've joined later, you can re-watch it along with all of our other live streams on our YouTube and on our Instagram. So thank you so much for joining.